Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face. So my next interview is with François Girard. What a pleasure to talk with the director of so many wonderful films. Red Violin being one of them. When I heard that the interview was booked, I was thrilled, looking forward to meeting him and to having a conversation about so many different things, mostly about his new film, The Song of Names, premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival this year, starring Tim Roth and Clive Owen and others. Robert Lantos, producer, and Howard Shore. Come on, the composer for the film. This is a film you're going to need to see. It opens on Christmas Day. It goes wide, I believe, North American release. This is a film about relationships. It's a film about music. It's a film about trauma and PTSD. It's historical, and as François says in our interview, in our conversation, it really is about remembrance. And this thing about memory is just so, has been a theme for me, not only in my own life and the philosophy and that I've studied and the writing that I've done, and I think many of the interviews that I've done on Face2Face as well, very connected to this idea of self and who we are and how we deal with the choices we make and our responsibility and the communities that we step into and we respond to and we relate with. So we had this wonderful conversation, and one of the things that I just so appreciated about François was his ability to just step in and we talk about the intimacy of this film and how music is louder than words, and how music doesn't need subtitles, and isn't that wonderful? And how Howard Shore did this archeological dig to find this song, and how important that I guess you could say the melody is for driving the story forward. And so yeah, this is a conversation I think you're going to enjoy a great deal with François Girard, but also a film that you're going to need to see for a whole lot of reasons. I hope everyone sees it. It's compelling, it's beautiful, it's tragic, it's deeply relational, and the music is stunning, and it's entertaining as well. And I hope François is okay with me saying that. But there are. This is. I was going to say there are bits of business about our conversation that I really wish we would have had. We could have had more time, and I'm glad in a way that we didn't get to connect at TIFF this year, because it would have been rushed. We would have only had a few minutes, and you've got 30 minutes here with François Girard coming right up about his new film, A Song of Names. So stay tuned. Don't forget davidpecklive.com for more information about my writing and my speaking. You can purchase a copy of Real Change is Incremental there, and also face2facelive.ca. It's so many interviews coming up on 500, so many TIFF interviews. We've got some new authors coming out in the new year in 2020. We're going to be taking a bit of a turn, I hope, looking for some sponsors. If you want to advertise on Face2Face, you can do that through our newsletter. We've got a pretty good social reach. I continue to be amazed at how we're getting out there, and if you want us to do shout-outs for you as well, please reach out, contact us. We can do that. And you can also support us through Patreon, believe it or not. We have a few supporters there, and if you can't do that, which I totally get, would love for you to leave a review on iTunes. It's hard to get people to do that. I'm going to have to come up with some kind of contest or something to get people incentivized just to leave a simple review. I mean, of course, if you like it, we'd really love the review on iTunes. It helps getting word on the street. Share it with friends, sign up for the newsletter, and then don't forget rabble.ca for other journalists, other podcasts, and news for the rest of us. This is a team of people talking about issues that matter. So don't forget, stay tuned. Don't forget, that's kind of the theme, I think. François, I hope you're smiling for today's interview. Coming right up, François Girard talking about his new film, A Song of Names. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We are joined by a very special guest here today with us here in Toronto at Elevation Studios. Can we call it Elevation Studios, Francois? I'm not sure.
Elevation Pictures.
Elevation Pictures office in Toronto, just around the corner from where it all happens at the Toronto International Film Festival. François Girard is here today to talk about his new film, A Song of Names. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks to you.
So you're in Toronto kind of for a little bit of a press tour, is it? As the film, by the way, folks, the film's coming out in a few days, Christmas Day, wide North American release. And by the way, congratulations on the film. I love the film for so many reasons, and I can't wait to get into the conversation. But
thank you.
So what are you doing in Toronto?
We're doing press, when you release a film like this, we have to travel in various festivals, various countries, and now comes the time of the release. So we're doing press in Montreal and Toronto, and then across the country, and we did a press tour in Los Angeles and New York with Clive, and so it's time to support the film.
Little disappointed Clive and Tim aren't here today to join us.
I mean, we're all doing our
We even
share.
have seats and a fresh cup of coffee here for both of them.
Yeah, exactly. But they've been in places where I was not. Howard Shore is doing his side. Sometimes we're together, sometimes we're not. So everybody's
So Howard Shore, Tim Roth, Clive Owen, quite a cast, quite a story. Can you tell us a little bit about the coming together of it all and the I guess it's a pretty common question, I would think, for filmmakers, but these seeds take a long time. I mean, this is a film that's been probably sitting with you or a story that's been sitting with you for a long time.
Well, not that long, because a couple of years. But what happens is in my past, I've written most of my films. So if you start from scratch, Red Violin is 5 years of your life, right there.
Right, and fantastic, by the way. Big fan.
Short films are also quite long,
yep.
But in here, I jumped into a running train.
Interesting.
And then there was already a script adaptation of Norman Lebrecht's book of the same name, The Song of Names. And Robert Lantosh was at the helm, and they sent me the script. And then I read the script, and I read the book, and then I joined the team. But then, yes, I think probably as a director, no matter how we work and plot and design and all of the big ideas, I think there's nothing more important than bring people in and bring the right people in.
Right.
And it started in this case. First big move was Howard. We contacted Howard, Robert and I, and very early on we started a conversation. I was very lucky to have Howard join me and Robert. Such an amazing companion. It was probably one of the happiest collaboration in.
So the first one on board was Howard Shore, the composer.
Yeah.
So can I quote you? Making film is making music. I'm pretty sure that's you, isn't it?
Yeah. Because often, people think that I have a particular interest in music, which I do, and to the point where I made it quite at the forefront of my work.
Sure.
But every filmmaker is making music. Music is film. Film is music, but in this case, of course, we have in the very title of the film, The Song of Names. We needed to figure out that song. That was the first discussion, and it took. I really look at it it felt very much like an archeological dig.
Oh, wow.
And then Howard built a team of archaeologists in Bruce Rubens and Judith Klerman, a Jewish scholar and Jewish music expert. And together, I was more of I was part of that conversation, of course, but when it comes to digging out the DNA, the truth of what would be sung in a Stoke Newington synagogue in 1951 by a community of Polish immigrants,
right.
Refugees. They did the work. Howard was the...
Is this the one scene in the... there's many scenes, but the one scene, that very distinct scene where the rabbi is singing to the whole group and very moving and kind of a reason for why the relationship or at least one of the relationships breaks down in the film. Pretty important stuff, right?
Yeah, it's a very revealing moment. It's a center of gravity, both
Nice.
narratively and musically.
Sure.
So we started there. And then song. It took a year or a year and a half before Howard played anything to me, but we talked all along. And that conversation greatly impacted on the script writing.
So you're making the film. Howard hasn't played you any of the music for a year. Is that?
No, we started 2 years
Oh,
prior.
okay.
So in that 2 years conversation prior to shooting, it took a long while before Howard played me anything, and I was not in a rush to hear anything. It was just but just to tell you that there is a lot of thinking and slow talking and slow digging, and eventually the song came out.
The archaeology of music, the archaeology of film and art, really, I suppose, in a way, right?
Yeah, I think
so many pieces, the mystery of it, the discovery.
And then when you write, people think of it, I think there's a general conception that assumption that when we write a story we invent it. We don't. We have, there's a little bit of freedom in deciding, committing to, I'm going to tell the story of a violin, but then from that moment on, you're enslaved to a reality that you discover as you write. It's the story that tells you what to do, or so you see what I mean? I don't the notion of pure creation, that we are inventing all of those. It's the world, history, vectors, and all sort of aspects that.
Is there, François? Is it? Are you talking about that? The almost the revelation of it as it sort of reveals itself to you in the making, in those slow conversations. So you have the script, you have a plan, you have your cast, you have Howard Shore and Robert Lantos on board, but it's kind of the creation in the making of. Is that
I mean, by that point in production, then it's probably slightly different. But the writing process, I think, is very much it's very comparable to gardening.
Oh, nice.
You plant a seed, and it has all its information, and then if you give it enough water and sun and love, eventually it reveals itself. It grows into what it is, not what you want it to be. And of course, you can shape it and trim it and
nice.
Push it in a certain direction, but ultimately the story has its own law, has its own reasons, and then people join in and submit in the same way that we do as writers and directors. We join to be part of that tree, and then it comes to life on its own will.
How hard to convince a Tim Roth or a Clive Owen to buy into a story like this, to buy into a film like this?
It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all. We meet. I think they read. They're like me. They're text driven. They're story driven. And then if they see that the story is worth telling, and if they have an opportunity to show their craft, then we engage into a talk, and in that case the talk was very short. I had one meeting with both of them, and then after that we commit to work together.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's got to be pretty validating too, from a whole. So, I mean, I've always been working alongside Tiff and interviewing filmmakers for quite a few years now, and always still marvel and kind of am blown away at the collaborative, cross-functional, relational component of filmmaking. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy from those long conversations, like you say, the archaeology. That metaphor is really interesting, right?
Well, in that case
layers.
in particular, I think Howard was the ultimate archaeologist.
Nice.
It was. I really saw him digging that song.
Sure.
And then once you have the song, then you do the violin version, and then everything else comes.
Well, and it's so fascinating, right? The one leads to another, right? It's so relational. It's so deeply connected. And what an intimate, beautiful, compelling film. You must have felt, I would imagine, the actors Clive and Tim and others and Howard and Robert must have felt that intimacy and that importance of this particular story.
Yeah, I mean, the intimacy was the key, and the permission for all of us to approach that highly saturated theme of Second World War and the Holocaust. I mean, I don't think if I was offered a film that is looking straight into the eyes of the grand history or the Holocaust, that I would feel a permission. But now there's a remoteness, like we are intimately engaged with two characters, Martin and Dovidl, and we stay very, very close to them. They're in every scene and never in direct contact with the war. Like there's a little bombing in London, the two kids are going around, that's as close as you get, and then we visit the memorial of Treblinka later. But other than that, like we're living that relationship and observing, witnessing the ripple effect, the reverberation of the grand events. So there's a remoteness that gave me comfort and I think that's provided by the book by Norman de Brecht, and this is how I felt.
It's a war film, but it's obviously post-war. I mean, like you say, you see moments of that, but it's really about trauma and the PTSD and that relational component and the brokenness.
Yeah.
Especially of the one character in particular, Clive Owen's character, but and like you say, the ripple effect and how far and how deep this actually goes.
Yeah, how lives have been changed and altered forever, and families destroyed, and so yeah, like I think the like this dynamic between intimacy and history, grand history, like was like very comfortable for me. Like it was a healthy
approach.
Yeah, like and then I felt like I had permission to.
So permission, you were bringing something sort of new to this.
Yeah, I think Norman provided an angle that made it viable to treat a highly saturated subject matter.
Right. Yeah, I think in the film, and I don't know if these are your words or, but may music speak louder than words? You know, just to come back to that musical theme for you. I guess that's a thread for you throughout your work. It seems to me. I mean, is that a comment about art for you? Is that a comment about relationship and what resonates?
Well, I think you're actually quoting one of the characters, the mayor of Newcastle, who was leading that scene in the beginning of the film. Well, music to me and to, I would like to think to many, like it speaks louder and more transparently, like in many different ways. Like, you know, you don't need subtitles for music. Music travels. It's a language. For me, it's really another language that we speak, a place where we meet, like literature, like arts. Like I think art in general is in some kind of elevated place where we meet and exchange and share and influence one another. And I think it's very precious to protect that.
As you were mentioning that, I think of music and healing, and I'm sure you know the traumatic aspects of all the characters in this film. You know, music therapy, for instance. You know, it's getting down to play an instrument, the focus, and I would imagine there are a lot of psychotherapists who use music, as a therapeutic sort of tool. I'm interested in your thoughts on the story from Dovidl's character's perspective. It seems like religion is where he finds his healing, or at least he thinks he finds his healing.
Well, he's changing his mind many times.
Exactly,
it's a very complicated path.
It's very complicated, which most of us travel, right?
Yes, but his questioning has been catalyzed and enhanced by the traumatic events we're talking about. Right. So he starts like with a ultra-Orthodox education, comes to London, renounces his faith.
Quite a scene, by the way.
Yes.
The renunciation of his faith, that's
one of my favorite. Jonah
Hauer-King
delivered an incredible scene there.
Mm-hmm.
And then finds his way back to the faith. It's a very complicated path. And that was like, just to understand that, for me, like...
he has a beautiful line, doesn't he say it took the Holy One four years to find me.
Yeah.
Which is just so interesting, right?
Yeah, like it's... and like it was an effort for me because I'm non-Jewish, so like just to understand his path. But I'm in Martin's situation.
Mm-hmm.
Martin is non-Jewish, so we're like sort of like looking in
Dovidl's
world,
right?
and inviting the audience with us to try to figure out what the guy's made of and what explains his betrayal and his like various decisions that could be like Dovidl's a highly questionable character, like in his in his choices and like that's the drive of the movie. Like the film is driven by a big why, and that why starts right at the first scene. Why they did not show up in the concert, and then Martin is like the one to keep that question alive throughout the movie in Tim Roth.
Is this so? So I'd love to hear Francois, what you think this film is really about. I hope that's not a too simplistic of a question, because I think any great story, any great piece of art is very, Again, I'm loving the archeological dig, that Howard Shore had to do to get that song, and I wonder about that with moments in a film and just the layers of it. So for me, this is about friendship and love and relationship and trauma and war and all these things. What for you? What leapt off the page for you, maybe on the first reading?
I would normally resent that question, but I happen to have a very easy answer, and it's called remembrance. And I think I'm talking more and more about it, like in the context of this film, but also outside. Like I think we are living in societies that are deeply plagued with amnesia.
Wow.
And I think if you look around, and it's like, and I'm not excluding myself, like this, it's an effort to escape the present. We're glued to our screens, to our phones, to the technology, and this technology that is, in theory, providing us all sort of opportunities, I think jails us in the present.
Right.
Like everybody walking around the street trying to figure out who's eating what at the same time. Like we're all like this Instagram craze. Like,
sure.
So I think we're increasingly drawn into the black hole of the present, disconnecting ourselves from history, and also disconnecting ourselves from a vision of the future. We're running to a big wall, and no one wants to see it. We're all taking refuge into a still comfortable present, but like if it doesn't take much to, all the evidence is there that will soon be gone, and we don't want to see it. So I think the disconnection with the past is now no stranger to, there's a close relation with the disconnection with the future, toward the future, with the future. And I think again, art, film, literature, music are all great antidotes to like take us out of that narrow obsession, tunnel vision, and bring us back, reconnect ourselves with the great events from the past and what's waiting for us in the future.
It's so good. So it's so many things there. It sounds like the beginning of the French philosopher Henri Bergson wrote a book, Matter and Memory. It sounds like you're about to go into a lecture on Bergson. Like it's wonderful stuff, because there's, as you say, about being present with the device, sort of present with the device and wondering about what other people are eating. But really, I'm not convinced that's present. It almost sounds to me like in order to be present, you need to be honoring of the past. Anyway, we can go deeper on that if you want.
No, but there's so much apparent. Like I mean, like for instance, I think there's a lot of the level of intelligence to create that technology. Like we have and we have achieved like an amazing prowess, tour de force, like with the current state of the technology that is available to everybody. But then, like, the paradox is that technology allows groups to pretend that the earth is flat. So in a way, like for centuries, we worked forward into producing this amazing prowess, and then in perfect contradiction, it sends some of us back to 400 years ago, thinking that Earth is flat. So And then that's only like one good example, but in the case closer like to in the case of this film and the theme of this film, a good statistic is that like 50% of the population under 30 years old, like they don't even know what the word Holocaust means. So there's a point where, of course, I think Robert Lantosh the first like felt like an impulse to revive the memory, and then I joined, and then I think the actors and the filmmakers with me, the team, everybody, that I think it was a very clear mission. And if you ask what does it mean to all of us, it's remembrance.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting. You know, memory is such a. I go to I just went immediately to. I don't know if you remember the scene in American Beauty, where I remember the name of his character Ricky, who's watching the bag scene, and he says the famous bag scene, which has been parodied and so on. But his line is, "I need to remember." And that has stuck with me. Blade Runner, you know, a classic, one of my favorite films of all time. This is a film about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I mean, this is about our person, and this is about who we are. And again, we're sort of coming full circle almost to that intimacy of, you know, what are we, afraid of the past? Are we just so wound up in our own lives that we don't care? Is it apathy? I mean, is it the tech? You know, is it the next big Amazon purchase, right? Why don't I want to step into that past with you, right? And so maybe that's the function of art in this case. I don't know. It's so much there.
I think technology has become a catalyst for individuality, and then we sort of forget that we're just a product of a long lineage of human history and experiences, and so I think as a species, I think we should be really worried about what's happening now. I think, and it draws us closer to a very destructive mode.
Climate change and a disregard for the past. Maybe the top two
climate
issues.
Change, like nuclear threat, that like again, like like I was in Hiroshima not long ago, and then what is left of that? Like the Holocaust is not the only genocide. Like what is left of the other genocides? What is left of what happened in China? The Stalinism, the Maoism, like all of these very tragic, destructive events that we keep repeating. And I think the odds of repeating right now are higher because I think we're short-sighted. There's a myopia that like makes us as a society, like I think we're trapped into a very difficult position, and I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think to look back and forward, and I think. I happen to be a filmmaker, and I think movie making is still a great antidote to that. Like, I don't take more credit than I deserve, but like I think, you know, when you see a mission, and you
right.
participate. Yeah.
I love the antidote to it because, it's so interesting. I had a friend who used to sort of do this thought experiment, and he would say if you sort of went back, if you could do this, and you remove these memories out of your life one by one, this conversation you and I have today, and what happened to me this morning, and the call in, and so on, and slowly over time we become nothing, I guess. We reduce ourselves back to less than zero. We are a product of our memories and those people. And I wonder, you know, there's a scene in the film, and I think it's Dovidl's character where he kind of loses it and says something about the thousands of people that we don't even know their names.
Yeah, the young one.
And I wonder if there's something about that recollection, that meeting, that again trying to bring it back to sort of that intimacy and that relationship. You know, again, I studied philosophy, François. So Levinas, a French philosopher, talks about the face speaks.
You
right?
are the philosopher, not me. But there's I guess it's a questioning that everyone has to a certain degree. In that particular case, the young Dovidl is responding to the young Martin, who says, "Don't you have a heart?" Like, because he just robbed a dead body.
That's right.
And then the young Dovidl says, Well, should I care about that one in particular, or the tens of thousands of who died yesterday all over Europe? Like, so there's a sense of, and if you look at how the news are behaving, like like the journalism nowadays, the level of fiction, and how we're drawn into individual stories and losing the big picture, like I think it's pretty obvious that there's some serious work to be done there.
Right.
And it starts with each of us. I think we all have to activate a part of our brain that is underused right now.
Was there any connection? There's a couple questions, and we got to wrap it up here soon. I'm afraid to say it's always kind of heartbreaking for me when I get to meet someone like you, a great filmmaker, and we get 30 minutes together, and I feel like we've just started, and we have to shut down the conversation. The Hall of Names in Israel. Did that come up in conversation during the making of this film? I saw a film recently called Cheating Hitler, a documentary that came out around Remembrance Day. This past year, a Canadian production. And it's something that I wasn't really that familiar with. And this idea is that they're trying to name every person who died in the Holocaust.
Well, the notion of remembrance is deeply anchored into the Jewish liturgy and the Jewish faith. It has to do also with the oral tradition.
Yep.
So now
Which
again,
is the singing of the song and all the names.
And then I've had my visits at the synagogue, various synagogues, and remembering places, remembering individuals, victims. Like I think is at the core of the liturgical tradition. But again, like we go back to Norman Lebrecht, who is a Jewish scholar and a music scholar, and reconciled all of that remembrance in song. So it's a perfect synthesis of Norman's knowledge, and he wrote a book that is completely the product of both these knowledges. And so yes, there's a connection with the Hall of Names and any other example of remembrance.
It's so interesting the way the film kind of ends, and maybe this is a good way to wrap it up. The line in there somewhere in there, you don't have to be guilty, you don't have to be guilty to feel guilty. At the end, he says to Martin, "Now you need to forget me." In the letter, I'm kind of done. I'm moving on. I'm becoming. So he's sort of becoming himself while letting go of himself, and then he responds by saying it's the community of faith. So I mean, it's really interesting how he's dealing with this. Well, this form of remembering, or maybe not even remembering.
No, that's I'm with you there. Like and then what's at the core of that letter is he says like I've joined a community of faith, and I can no longer be an artist, which requires to be an individual. Right. And then I'm no longer an individual. So the conflict between community and individuality is so well expressed there, and it rings like a big bell, like to me, and I think to the audience, like, and it's a good final landing. Well,
and I'd like to think that he could continue to pursue his art, his expression in a community of faith, but maybe not to the degree. I think of the dueling scene, which is absolutely astounding, by the way. It's lovely in the bomb shelter. Yeah, that community, like there's this beautiful community that develops out of these dueling violinists. Anyway, it's
well, he's putting like. I don't think he's like Dovidl continues to be an artist after that, like because he puts the very notion of being an artist in complete contradiction with the faith. Right. So I guess I would assume that he's sticking to the faith and dropping any kind of performance.
And maybe, François, we can be hopeful that as the story continues, he continues to make new choices. And he is quite a character, and he's all over the place in a sense. And so perhaps very, very passionate. Maybe over time he comes back and he revisits the violin once again. At some point.
But he found his peace. Like I think this is where the film lands. I think Dovidl, despite all the odds and conflicts that we've been exposed throughout the story in the movie, like we come to understand that he found a resolution to what is unresolvable through faith. my faith is art. That's my religion, and then it's also another place where you can build a community, and that's.
It's great. It's great. Isn't that where we're all, trying to find our way home, resolution, resolve, whatever it is, that relational conflict, whatever we have. Thank you for a great conversation today and a beautiful film. I wish you all the success in the world with it. I was at TIFF this year. Was it the world premiere at Toronto International Film Festival? Received well, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would have loved to have been a part of the Q&As, by the way. But this is way better. So appreciate your time today. We've been talking with François Girard about his new film, a beautiful, compelling new film. Get out and see it. A Song of Names, opening on Christmas Day. François, thank you so much for your time today.